Welcome to Difficult Conversation Africa broadcast. I present to you the host, Yinka Olaito.
Okay, welcome to part 2 of Difficult Conversation African podcast. You know, in the previous episode where we discussed media and democracy in Africa, and my guest still remains Mr. Dapo Olorunyomi. In the first episode, we've talked about the role of media, accountability, funding, and some of those issues. In this episode, our focus is on how media can drive citizen participation, sustainability, among many other. So I really appreciate the point you are raising. As a concerned person, as a leader in the industry, I know that these are some of the issues that you want to see in the industry. When we consider, let me ask you this question: when we consider media freedom and restriction from power, journalists face harassment, intimidation, violence when covering sensitive issues like corruptions and all the rest. And in some ways, this may be discouraging. As an individual, I know I've followed you over the years. I know that you and your family had faced a lot of intimidation, and harassment and all that. And today you are still standing. For a young person who want to come to this industry, because I'm more particularly about the young person, what will you advise?
Well, thank you. I'm just a lucky person. People who have suffered greater, retribution. You can count, you know, scores and scores of them around. Um, but it is, the let me pick a thought from the psychologist Franz Fanon. He has this interesting passage in his book, Wretched of the Earth, where he had said every generation, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting it,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah, he says every generation must find out, the tone and tenure of his mission and must fulfill it or betray it. What he's saying in essence is that at every time in history, uh, there are specific challenges that face society. And the people of that society, the people within that generation, the people within different age group, different profession, different location in that community must understand what is that mission, what is that central problem, and then the only sense of fulfillment in life is then to do something about that problem. Let me illustrate it a little bit. Prior to the 1960s, we were still under colonial rule. But the whole years between, let's say, I just take arbitrarily, let's say 18. So, okay, once the Nigerian newspaper press actually was founded, let's say 1859, right? So, that period was a period of colonial domination. You have to ask yourself, if you're a teacher, if you're a doctor, if any profession you really belong to, but more so if you're a journalist, that what is the problem of our community today and what must be done about it? So when I spoke earlier of the right kind of education that helps you to analyze a problem very well, that is it. But if you miss the meaning of that problem, if you fail to understand that problem clearly, you're going to be profiling wrong solutions to it. Obviously, so in that late 19th century to 1960, the problem in the country was the problem of colonial rule. How do we put an agenda of independence before our people so that we become a self-governing people? That was the problem. So using a Fanonian framework, what that merely meant was that if you were a journalist, it's important for you first to understand that problem you are dealing with here is a problem of a colonial rule. And what will be, so he says, once you find out that problem, you must either fulfill it or betray it. So you cannot be sitting on the fence. Sitting on the fence sometimes is a signature definition of betrayal. So he's saying, in essence, is that what do you do about it? So you fight it. In the years 67 till, well, most of the years of military rule, obviously, democratization of the Nigerian community was a major. How do you end military autocracy? So at every time, there's a specific problem that faces community, and you have to understand that problem and then how to share. So when you then say, this, so I've always just been part of a group of people who are quite aware. As a young person, I was very active within the students' movement. I went to the University of Ife. And Ife then used to be very hotbed for student activism.
Very vocal, yeah, I know.
So yes, so how to change society for value. Part of the problem we saw as students was how do you, what we then call democratization of access to education. That was when we were part of the process that helped to produce what then turned out to be called the NANS Charter of Demand. The Charter of Demand was the first blueprint document that laid out how to run campus, at least from the perspective of students, how to run campuses better, how, to talk about financing education, and so many other things, and how to really define youth life in community. So obviously, once we left school and became journalists early into our youth life, then the question became, what's the problem? These soldiers have to go. So I'm just saying that at every time. So sometimes it's not by choice that you do certain things, because those problems offer themselves, and you must have to respond to it with the right kind of tools. That obviously, how to make our democracy whole at a time that democracy is retreating, at a time that democracy is suffering deficits, not only in Nigeria and sub-region, at a time that, narratives of division, narratives of which come either in the form of disinformation, hate speech, and all those kinds of things, have become new challenges that the media needs to deal with. So I'm just saying, in essence, that at every time, it's important to understand the key problems facing the society, facing the community, understanding too that the tools before us are the tools, of narratives, how to tell as storytellers, how to narrate those stories truthfully, and how to help build communities around important projects, how to move and improve, community life. These are the kinds of, and in doing all that, it's important to also understand that there will be bad guys and good guys. So the good guys,
there will be
will be
backlashes.
allies. Yeah, so there will be backlashes. Yeah, there will be broken bones. There will be, you get hurt in the
So you are
process.
saying that
All
as
that.
young journalists, they must be prepared for such.
I think it is wise to understand that, it comes with the territory, that
So the earlier they are used to it, the better for them.
Yeah, but we don't encourage people to take stupid risks. We
Exactly.
we merely say, with regards to the mission of journalism, as important as it is, there had been two key ways of explaining what we do and the kinds of opposition we face. One, this is Occam was an old, Central European editor who was a big champion who wanted to stop wars from fighting. His own theory had always been that, great journalists and great editors are like great generals. They do not die on their bed, meaning you die at the battlefront, So that's one theory. But increasingly, a more tempered view about the role of journalists in relation to issues of danger, challenges of safety had also emerged, popularized through UNESCO and so on, just because we then having this alarming rate of, hurt that was affecting journalists to say that no story is worth your life. You have to
Exactly.
Have to take so it has, this always these divides exist there. But what I would say is that retribution will always come. Sometimes it comes to you in the course of duty, and sometimes it's not something you choose. It may come to you even in the comfort of your home. What is important is
That's
just
true.
to understand your own job, your own role in improving society, and try to play it as decently as possible and fairly as possible. Yeah.
Let me ask this question because of the timing. Maybe for now, infrastructure capacity gap, misinformation, and fake news continue to hamper media effectiveness. Do you think this is related to the funding challenges?
In a sense, yes, but also it's better not to minimize the headwinds that are responsible for this process. One is to understand that so Trump created the very vulgar word fake news, and it's a very colloquial, it has no meaning, because what we are really talking about is information disorder. And within that structure of information disorder, that's the breakdown on information. It is, there's misinformation. That's what you call disinformation. A more puristic analysts would say there's also things they classify as malinformation. Of course, misinformation being those forms of untrue narratives, untrue information that people peddle, but where the intent is not to hurt people, but they peddle it only out of ignorance. In other words, I say something, I don't know it. In fact, it may be genuinely because I have a feeling for, like, oh, this is happening. I think you have to run out of time. I hear that this is happening. It's not true, perhaps. I mean, it turns out not to be true, but I wasn't doing it to hurt you. I was just out of concern about you. So which doesn't make it nice all the same. But there's the other side of it, which is deliberate, willful, peddling of lies and untruth, which is to have poisoned the world, make community unsafe, and hurt the reputation of some people, violate the privacy of people, and things like that. All this happened. What all this meant for us as journalists is that we're dealing with how do we manage, how do we use the information available to build narratives that try to address the central goal of journalism. How do we make information as truthful as possible, as accurate as possible? Because, and that's where journalism is different from every act and every craft, of storytelling. It is not it's not a form of fiction. It is that narrative which is merely and wholly truthful and accurate, and where the information, the elements of things we call information that builds up to be the news structure that we share with people, we must verify them. Verification is central to the practice of journalism. And if it is not, then the information often can be untrue, and the purpose of journalism is defeated. So, to summarize, around the question you have asked, so infrastructure is certainly part of it, not having the right kinds of tools to be able to dig deep, because sometimes the explanation and the truths are not on the surface. You have to do more valuable reporting to be able, and these things are expensive. So without the right resources to be able to do good reporting, we can end up being very superficial, and probably just totally misleading to our audiences. Second is, of course, sometimes the restrictive structure of policy and laws in the country can lead to prior censorship, where people actually cannot venture to do for the fear of retribution that government, so you have all these funny structures of law, like the cyber crimes law, the Terrorism Protection Acts, and host of laws which are really they hinder freedom of expression, and they make the practice of journalism difficult. Summary, total. I mean, final summary on that is to just understand that when narratives are untrue and inaccurate, it hinders the ability to build community for effective participation. The ultimate goal is to devalue democracy. So you'll find out that in communities and countries where we're seeing these deficits in democracy building and the whole structure of liberty and freedom, the very first point of attack is to attack, the freedom of expression, and to make sure that people don't have the right kinds of information around which to make reasoned decisions, not only about how to manage and govern themselves, but really how to manage relationship and organize society. So that's the core uh, of the discourse. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I know that time is of essence, and I've taken your time beyond what I asked for. But if you will just speak to this very sharply, and we can just conclude. Informed citizenry and media independence are vital to open society. Many African nations and continent, let's just talk about the continent, and African nations have not been able to achieve this. Where do we go from here? And as a leader in the industry, what will you say to it about it?
Well, I mean, I think, we have to take it from the point of education, informed citizenry is central to the right kinds of decisions that will lead to effective participation, but will lead to, in fact, meaningful and substantive open society, as you say. if you are going to have people make decision, that's why at one level also we describe journalism as a decision science, because at the end of the day, our goal is to help people make the right kinds of decisions. Um, so I put premium on the education of the journalist first and foremost, because as we said earlier, if the educator has to be educated himself, because if you're going to inform citizens to make decisions about, let's say, in a democracy, about electoral choices, you must know what the programs of uh, platforms and parties are, must know the implication, you must know how it strengthens or devalue the choices that people will make, and you have to present this to them. But it's not only informed citizenry, it's not only with relations to political choices, even our, you know, consumer choices. You want to go to a good school. Parents want to send their kids to good schools. They have to depend on what the media is able to tell them about school A is better than this, because this is the kind of teachers that they have. This is the results that they have been able to. These are the motivations, that students build just attending to that school, and so on and so forth. You want to buy different products. Even if it's a car you want to buy, you are faced with, a rush of choices. It is for, the consumer journalist who does consumer watch, or who's in the whole area of business journalism, to be able to tell you, this car is more fuel efficient. This one has safety quotients than this other one. And so that at the end of the day, you can have a balance of all these conditions and so on. Or even take neighborhood. You want to live in a neighborhood, the journalists should be able to tell you that, housing is cheaper here, schools are cheaper, you are closer to decent health care here, the security is easier here. You may get all that here, but this is missing here, and so on and so forth. This is really what, the informed citizenry principle really means. Uh, Again, it is a call on journalists themselves, if you are, say, on a beat, to be such a great master of a beat. I'm on the aviation beat. Which airlines should I be patronizing? For what reasons? Blah, blah, blah. This one comes on time. This one never delivers, disappoints passengers. This one, responds to you with dignity and decency. All those kinds of things. These are the expectation that society and communities need to have, when they have a decent media working for them, and this, it will not come out of thin air. It has to be built. It has to be prepared for. And education of journalists, therefore, is the first foundation for all that. The second, of course, is the ethics of the journalist himself. They are based to be truly professional in being able to do this, because your sense of professionalism, your sense of ethics, ultimately is then what defines your value as someone who honors the whole principle of journalism. There's an interesting debate going on in this country today, out of what then or who then is a journalist. And sometimes you find it extremely laughable, when even senior journalists themselves get into this kind of conversation and are unable to provide effective guidance. Um, the understanding or the notion is that you have to go to a journalism school before you can then become properly a journalist. Unhappily, that's not the case. It's untrue. Uh, like all professions, the central marker of a profession, when you say something is a profession, the irreducible factor that defines it as a profession is the ethics that it brings to the table.
It's the ethics.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, I mean, you can read history or read engineering. If you want to be a journalist, obviously you have to learn the craft. You either learn it through formal education or you learn it through,
Don't you know?
yeah, you just get in and then learn as it go in the newsroom or something. But at the end of the day, all that will not make you a great journalist if you are unable to subscribe to the ethics of that profession. In the same way that you say that, um, you could be educated as a lawyer, but end up really as a bandit. You can be worse than anything.
That is the truth.
Yeah, you could be a doctor, but by education and training, but you may end up, if you don't subscribe wholly and fully in fidelity to the Hippocratic oath, you just
You may end up in Alaba.
yeah, you're something else, and you could train as a soldier, go through your regimentation, be commissioned, but the understanding is that you hold true to the Geneva Convention and hold true the oath of military justice. If you don't, then you're doing something else. Armed robbers carry guns. They also do regimentation of some sort, and there's hierarchy. They may not wear formal uniform. Even the bandits
Uniform.
in the northeast and northwest are wearing some form of kind of uniform, if you like. So will they?
Exactly. And
So
they
that
carry gun.
yeah, and the carry gun. So journalism at the end of the day is defined by its ethical principles. Um, so I mean, it's not as if you won't need to learn how to write. You obviously have to. Learning to write and rewrite, lifelong, endeavors. If you're doing this job, how you present, those things that you write, how we use it to draw the attention of our audience so that we build engagement around issues that will hopefully be the defining thoughts of the moment in a way that enriches people and so on. Yes, we'll have to learn all that, and we're learning it every day. But at the end of the day, it is not for those who are doing shouting matches on radio, as AOPs or, some of
You want to start shaking the table now.
people who are, on television. Well, frankly, their roles sometimes not more than entertainers, They
Exactly.
obviously inform people, but everybody inform, so just informing is not, the key things that
Not
we have.
the.
It is the ability for us to subscribe to an ethical principle that ensure that everything we're informing people about must be first and foremost true and add a context that makes it accurate and that all the claims that are built into those things that we say or inform people about are verifiable. Principle. Final. There's no other way to define a journalist outside that framework. Yeah. So
Thank you very much. I really appreciate on that point where you ended with principle, which is really really important. And thank you for making that clarification on the ongoing conversation around who is a journalist and who is not one. I know that you started shaking some tables there, but I really appreciate your frank and honest conversation. I want to say thank you because I know you are very busy. Thank you for the time that you have given us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for being a shining light in the industry and for living the life that everybody is looking up to you. And over the years, you've remained a principled journalist, a humble person, and that has shown in all your ways. And thank you for the kind of management style that you operate in all your organization, where people don't want to leave often, and it's like a family. I'm copying that from you little by little, whether you know it or not. Thank you once again. So, our listener, that is the end of this conversation. As usual, we ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to and follow us on all the platform, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and all of them. And please visit the project website, which is www.difficultconversationafrica.org. And if you need to send us a mail, just do so through info@difficultconversationafrica.org, or you can send us a DM. We are always there. Once again, thank you, and thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. For inquiry, please send an email to info@difficultconversationafrica.org. Telephone 0809 3160591. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Difficult Conversation Africa. See you soon.